Hey there everybody, welcome back to finally, after a very long wait, a new episode in Project C.A.R. As you can see, the car is back, and yes, it has taken a long time, but it is well worth it. So in this episode, what I'll be doing is I'm going to show you around the car, show you all the repairs that the guys at the body shop have been doing, all the modifications that they've done on my behalf and why they've done them, and anything else that I'm going to be doing from now on, because the car is, as you can see, it's not in its final color. She's actually in primer, and there's a reason for that. So more on that in a minute. Before we do, make sure you've subscribed to the channel if you haven't already, and then we'll get going. So as you can see, there's actually a lot of parts laying on the front of the car here. So first off, we've got the new dashboard. This is the Group 2 Racing dashboard. It's actually cut in two sections. This section will sit over here once in the car. Two reasons for that: A, because it's easier to install, and B, because for the trip masters I need to have easy access to the switches behind it, so therefore I can take the panel off without having to take the entire dashboard off. It's not going to stay like this. I'm going to have it coated with a certain material. I'm not entirely sure yet what it is, so if you have any good recommendations, then please let me know. Secondly, we have all the wiring laying out, and as you can see, there's some of it already laying in the car. The fuse block is laying on top of the car, which I still have to sort, and then all these wires that somehow will eventually end up in the car, but more on that when I get to it in a future episode, because I think we can fill this entire episode on this alone. Underneath the blanket I have hiding the new wind splitters. So these are the rubber parts that sit on top of the front fenders. Basically they had the same on the race cars. I really like the look of it, especially since we're going for a rally look. So these will go on in combination. There's one on either side, sorry. These go on in combination with the front air dam, which is currently not fitted, but it's a CSL air dam, which is currently still at the body shop, just for safekeeping, because I'm running out of space here. Then the roof scoot hoop will go on, which I'll show you later. And then on the boot we've got the ducktail, which will sit just there. Also hasn't been put on yet until the final paint is on. Both of them are actually hanging up here on the roof structure, so until they're needed they're going to stay up there. At the front, if we continue on this side, we've got the doors back. As you can see here, there's two holes in the door, and that's for the mirrors, so they put those on for me. The doors are nice and straight again. Originally we were considering going for the CSL type doors with the light aluminium skin. Eventually we decided not to, and these are the original doors back on. A lot of the window frame has been re-welded, repaired. Parts have been replaced, especially here on the front section and the bottom side of the front windscreen. The rear fender has been extensively repaired, especially the bottom section there has been cut out. The sills have been completely redone. They were rusted through. Initially we didn't think they were too bad, but sadly they were. So they have been replaced completely, and that's why at the end of the day it took about 19 months to get the car back. If we keep going along this side, then at the far back you can just see the mud flap hanging off there. That's just a temporary fit because I want to see how the bracket would. So as I said, secondary wind split on the left hand side here. Again, extensive repairs on the front section, especially on the inside, the top of the shock absorbers, which is a bit hard to show you because the bonnet is on and I don't have the space to put it, but I'll show you in a bit once the car is up. Otherwise, what have we got laying here? Well, we have the new connectors. So I'm using the Deutsch circular connectors. These happen to be the 29 pin ones. This one is actually open, and they'll be used to go through the front rear bulkheads, used for the switch panel and the dashboard, just to have a quick connect so I can easily take things out if I have to. So first off, you're probably wondering, where the heck is the left door? Well, it was there for the first 9 days the car was in my possession. Since then it hasn't. So what happened, you probably wonder? Well, I kind of messed up raising the lift recently, and what had happened, I'd left the door open. I thought I was going to miss my roof structure, but I didn't, and literally I had about 6mm overlap on this particular post here, which meant that the door started to crumple up at the top, and as the lift raised even further for me to get it back down again, because apparently it raises an inch when you try to get it down to unleash the locks, the rest of the bottom of the door started to crumple up as well. So now I have a door that is damaged again here at the top section and at the bottom section. So the guys picked it up last week to take it back to the body shop for some further repairs. Anyway, let's continue the tour before we get too hung up on that. On the driver's side then, what have we got? Well, first off, we've got the roll cage, and I'm building the roll cage in, not to keep hitting my head against, which I am doing while I'm working on it, but more to see how much space I've got everywhere else. So because I have to run various fuel lines and wire into the boot of the car, I need to know where I can run them without interfering with any of the structural parts of the car. So that's what the roll cage is in. It also helps me to put the seats in, which still haven't been bolted in fully. The brackets have been made, and as you can see, here are the mounting points for those. So there's two brackets that go across, and then the seat is mounted on top of that, which I'm currently doing on the other one. I'll include that in the next episode. Then in the back, you can see the old seats are back in. And the reason for this is that I need to find out how much space I've got to get various home fuel lines and connectors through the back wall. The idea is that they come through the seats here and then run down here. I need to make open this up so they can run through here, disappear underneath either seat, come out the front, and then run along the transmission tunnel to the front. As you can see, I've already started that before recording this episode. E9 owners may be aware that there is a drain tube in the back here somewhere, and that literally just runs water into your sill. My plan, however, is to connect a clear hose onto that tube or pipe, run it along the side here underneath the window, then come out through here and then down out the floor somewhere over there. So it just drips out the bottom of the car instead of back into the windowsills, to prevent me from having to redo the entire sill replacement in the next 5 years. And secondly, while we're on this side, as you can see, the cage is already in, but this is not your typical cage. I had them redesign the rear section of the cage because I need to have the rear interior still in place. It's part of the regulations for the rally racing. So the instead of going onto the rear fenders on either side inside somewhere about here, which meant that the seats couldn't go in, they have been reshaped to follow the roof structure and then go onto the rear parcel shelf, and then through there into the trunk where they've into the boot, where they've modified the shock towers in order to support that. And then I'll show you the structure in there in a second. Let me just put that aside for a second. You can see here the center console, which is a race car version, that has been modified as well. Normally it comes out to about here. I had it shortened so that I can still use my original handbrakes. I'm not allowed to use hydraulic handbrakes. So the original handbrake is going back in, which meant that he had to be shortened in order to fit everything. So he sits about here when I'm done with it. And then obviously I'll have to make a switch panel which runs from here to the top of this unit, which will also house a further 3 instrument dials. So more on that in a future episode. I've lost track of how many future episodes you're going to get, but it sounds like you're going to have a lot of them. So on the roof here, these mounting points, same at the other side and in the center there, they are for the roof scoop, which will go up. And then coming to the boot section, first off you see is this big box. Now that box is has been put in place to fit my custom-made long-range fuel tank, which will hold about 120-130 liters when it's finished. Then there will be a floor on top of that, which will probably sit level with this side on the brackets, pretty much where the original floor was. On top of that will be 2 spare tire mounts. A few other bumps you can see in here. These are the driver seat support brackets that I just mentioned. They still need bolting in. These units, they go underneath this particular box. Once the tank is in place, I know exactly where to drill these holes, so that will be done lastly. And this beautiful grey box is what will be sitting behind the refuel cap door back there, because I'm having a new internal tank refuel cover in there, and then this little wall here will separate the two, because in this particular section I am going to have the recharge port to keep the battery on a trickle charge when it's in the garage or in an event, or just to keep the battery topped up at all times. Lastly but not least, in the boot we have the roll cage structure as well. So like I said, let's see if I can drop the camera in a bit. They've modified the towers to support what comes through the parcel shelf onto these units, and that's then transferred across into this triangle shaped support bracket. They've reinforced the section down there as well, which sits just above the diff. You can already see the connectors coming through in the fuel line, which are in place. Also in the back will be the battery, which will be mounted on the left hand side, and the fire extinguisher system, for which the fire bottle will sit on the right hand side, and then runs a line all the way to the front. On the boot shelf itself, I'm not going to put in the original toolbox, A, because it's too heavy, B, because the tools are not very useful on a rally. But what I'll be doing is I'm going to have LED lighting mounted in here that sits pointing straight down when the boot is fully open. There will also be an additional 2 rear tail lights on the boot itself, so that when I'm standing behind the car in front of one of the tail lights, then at least these 2 are lit up so that people can still see the car on the side of the road. So I think that sums up the majority of the car modifications. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the car up for you. We'll have a quick look underneath what's been done there. Right then, let's have a look on the underside. This time we'll start at the back, work our way back to the front. So first off, as you can see, this is the big box that we put in place. So they had to modify it because normally it sticks out to the edge here. But in order for my exhaust to come through, because normally the race cars, it comes out underneath the passenger seat, in mine is still the original one, so that's going to run out of here, so they had to modify the box. This has all been replaced, all new welds, everything has been seam welded and then sealed on the inside. And these 2 brackets here are for my mud flaps, which are mandatory on the rallies. We have new jack points, which are actually in the center of the car, one on either side, the other one sits there. And these are strong enough to lift the entire car up, so if I put the jack right here or on the opposite side, the entire side will lift up, and there's strengthening braces inside the sills to support that. You can see on this side here, these are actually the 2 of the mounts for the passenger seat, and the bolts have just come through. So what will happen eventually is I'll probably put caps on that to seal them off. The 5-speed gearbox will be going in, but for that I need to have a new bracket. That will be made once the gearbox is actually in place, so we can measure it and then put it in. And the front jack points, while we're here, they have been replaced as well, so they've been changed for some proper square box sections instead of having the original ones where it kind of sits on the sill and all that. Wasn't too cool, but these ones are certainly doing the job. The other option is to put it on the chassis beam, which I did originally when I first took the car apart, but now that these boys are in, I figured I might as well use them. So we've made our way back to the front. This time it's the right front wheel. This one here, this bracket is also for the mud flaps, so there'll be mud flaps front and back. They've been welded in, and then eventually I'm going to have inner fenders inside here, which are actually laying on top there. They are going to go inside the wheel arch to protect it. Otherwise, what else has been done in here? A lot has been repaired around the brake. There's a lot of rust here. These brake brackets were almost falling off. They've been changed and welded in. A lot of the holes that were in here due to the gas installation we had before, they've been re-welded. Everything is nice and shut. So basically I've got fresh engine bay, which actually I should be standing in here and showing you from this side. Like I said, everything has been welded shut so that I can have a fresh start and re-drill the holes for the various parts that I need. Inside wells, they've put in a pipe on this side, since I'm going to the original Alpina style air filter construction. So the fresh air will come in from here, which will be drawn from behind the front headlights. Eventually I'm going to be having an oil cooler in here as well. I'm not entirely sure where it's going to be mounted. It may well be sitting somewhere here. It may well be behind the radiator. I'm not entirely sure yet, so that's why there's no brackets for that in the car just yet. On this side, the battery tray, the original has been removed, and as you can see, this one is also nice and smooth. There's 2 holes remaining, which I'll be using anyway. The rest is all closed off nicely. Same as in the boot, I'll be having a big light in the front. So somewhere on here there will be an LED bar, LED light bar, which will sit there to then light up the engine bay with the bonnet open. But like I said, I'll have plenty of material for you over the next, hopefully, weeks, months to present you with as I go through all the modifications that I'm doing, routing the wiring, the fuel lines, the fire extinguisher system has to go in. Like I said, there's plenty of things that I'll be adding, I'll be covering for you in further episodes, just like detailed episodes in each one. So to stop me from waffling on too much, I'm going to end it here. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode and get a bit of an idea of what I'm actually doing with the car and why. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hopefully I'll see you at the next episode, which with a bit of luck won't be as long as it was this one. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.